Welcome to Season 9 ELO Hell. That's right, in Season 9, more players than ever are stuck in ranks and are desperately trying to climb, but failing again and again. So we're going to talk about exactly why players are stuck in ELO Hell, what can you do about climbing in ELO Hell, and what are the many things that matter if you want to break past your previous peak and onto the next one. What do you got to do? We're going to break it all down. But if you enjoy the content, do me a solid and smash that like and subscribe. Only about 20% of you are subscribed, so it would go a long way and I would really appreciate it. But let's jump right into the content. Trying to figure out what to eat every night can be incredibly difficult, especially when you're trying to find something that's both affordable and easy to make. And it feels like that doesn't freaking exist. But that's why I'm so excited to introduce the sponsor of this video, HelloFresh. Now, I freaking love HelloFresh. I've used it many times, and not only are the meals incredibly good, but HelloFresh is so freaking cheap, especially when compared to many of the other inflation-filled options. Whether you're trying to save money, eat better, or just be less stressed about eating food in general, HelloFresh is going to help you do all three. No more staring at that fridge wondering what you're going to do for dinner. And one of the greatest things now is that when you try HelloFresh, you get to unlock free dessert for freaking life. On top of that, there's tons of quick and easy and 20-minute meals that let you minimize your stress and maximize your time spent, so you don't have to go shop for food, nor do you have to spend a lot of time cooking. You can just have an easy to access, absolutely delicious meal. Now, if you want to try America's #1 meal kit, you need to click my link in the description to get 16 free meals plus a free dessert for life while your subscription lasts. That's right, click my link in the description or check out the QR code. And once again, thank you HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. First off, let's talk about what makes Season 9 so freaking tough. Now, of course, we got the ranked reset, and while they did keep your MMR somewhat, a lot of players moved around, especially based on how they did in placements, and this created a lot of inconsistencies in skill within the rank system. Some players got higher than they normally are, or some players will push lower than they normally are, and then you combine that with this season being perhaps the biggest changes to Overwatch that we've seen since Overwatch 2 even came out. Now, while you can't control other people and the inconsistencies in the rank system, especially at the start, like this first start of the season is going to be rough, pretty much no matter what, it's going to be rough. It's going to be a lot of growing pains, and you can't really do anything about that. But what you can do is these two things. Number one, understand that fundamentals matter more now than they have for a very long time, especially positioning. If you are in positions that are away from cover, doesn't allow you to get behind cover very quickly, you're standing in the open anywhere, doesn't really matter where it is, and you don't prioritize high ground, you will die a lot. And it doesn't really matter what character you're on, doesn't really matter what role you're on, you need to reduce your deaths more than anything else. Now, there's also going to be more windows of time for you to punish other people, and if they're in bad positions over the course of enough games, you will consistently farm players if your position is better than theirs, and it literally doesn't matter what role you're playing. So I want you to check out my positioning guide that I have. Links will be in the description down below. Or you just need to listen to this one simple tip. When you are fighting in the neutral, not when you're pushing or backing up, but when you are poking enemies in a neutral or normal state of play, where you're just poking, fighting back and forth, trading resources, you need to be like half a second away from a piece of cover. If you randomly got knocked down to 1 HP, because you get to cover before you die from random spam. If the answer is no, your position is really bad. Now, this doesn't account for situations where you're hard pressing, pushing an advantage, using an ultimate, being aggressive with an ability, diving in. I'm just talking about poking and fighting in what is called the neutral, or the default state of play, the default state of exchanging resources and damage. Now, we did talk about team inconsistency and skill inconsistency, but something that creates more inconsistent problems than anything else is a synergy problem. You'll get some players and you'll try to play and nothing will work. Like, no matter what you do, you can't get a kill, you can't get anything going, and you're like, damn, all these players on my team, they suck. But if you got those same players in a different lobby with different players, a different set of synergies, those players would perform fine. And that's the thing. Synergy matters more than people think, and it's really important to set up these synergies, and there's a couple of ways to do it. Number one, try to match the strategy of the team composition. And if you are someone that is somewhat of a flexible player, then you can match your character picks to your team synergy. Super great. Like, let's say you have an insta-locking Genji and Tracer and you're a tank player. Well, play one of the dive characters that you know how to play. Any character with mobility, you can lock it in. Let's say you have a Hanzo Widow locker, try to play Sigma, but it's also on the other side of the spectrum. Like, let's say you play Sojourn and you play Genji, you can match your DPS pick to work with whatever tank you're rocking with, whether you're playing a brawl, a poke, a dive. Same thing with supports, understanding that your pick is the first thing that creates that synergy. Characters that work well together, and the idea is to try to line it up as best as you can. The more flexible you are, the better you can do that, but of course, within reason. I'm not saying to have like 5, 6, 7 characters in your hero pool, but within reason, try to pick the character that synergizes best with your team. The other thing that's super important is being a follower and not always trying to be a leader. It's really common for 5 people to all try to do their own thing and nothing gets done. Everyone is getting someone to 1 HP. Everyone's pulling off some play. But what happens is a Genji will be on one person on the flank. The ball will be in their backline on their support. Your healer is like trying to duel someone that's on them. And no one's doing the same thing. No one's helping in any meaningful way. There's some simple solutions to this. Number 1, communicate more. I feel like Season 9, Overwatch is at an all-time low with communications and comms. People are often in the comms, but no one is talking. Simple communication, effective communication just goes a long way and will carry games absolutely because you break through that anti-synergy. Another thing is making sure that you ping often. You ping combined with communication, even better. And the third thing is try to follow someone else's lead. Look at what your support is dealing with. Look at what your DPS is doing. Look at what your tank is doing and help them. Try to enable what they're doing and help them rather than going and trying to carry 24/7. Because I think a lot of people in their mind, they have it like they need to carry every game they're in, but it leads them to make mistakes by completely ignoring the rest of your team, what pace they're on, what they're doing, and creating any form of synergy at all, and you're just going to lose the game automatically. Now, I've been doing quite a bit of coaching this season, and I've heard a lot of people message me where they're overly concerned about their rank as of new Season 9. And there's a couple things that I would tell to those people. Number 1, you need to play more. And number 2, your rank is inconsequential compared to your previous seasons. So it's important to understand that we do not know how the ranks correspond with previous ranks. There's a lot of people that are in ranks that they never were in. Grandmaster 1s that are in Masters, Diamond players in Plats. You got to kind of ignore everything you knew about the previous seasons and give this new system time to properly fit people in the right areas and also kind of adequately give us what our skill is, right? Because we don't really know what these things mean. We don't know what the percentile of each rank is. A lot of this is going to kind of develop with time, and we'll know more information with time. But don't get too caught up in the rank. I want you to most importantly think about winning more games and getting better. That's what I want you to worry about right now. You can worry about your rank down the line, and I promise you, if you win more games and get better, you will climb. You will get whatever rank you want down the line. But don't get too caught up into the ranking today. You weren't any worse than you were just a little bit ago, fundamentally. Maybe you're making some more mistakes that are getting punished more now. But as a core player, you can get to the same rank you were, the same level of skill with just a few little adjustments. Now, another thing to note is that win streaks matter, and they matter more now than they have in the past, especially when you are starting to win multiple games in a row. Sometimes I want you to just really, really lock in, stay focused, and try to make sure that if you're ever on a win streak and you start to maybe feel fatigued, you start to feel out of it, you start to feel mentally boomed, take a break, and then when you come and reset, go back on your grind, I need you to thoroughly warm up using codes like VAXTA, VAXTA, really grinding, warming up, maybe even playing a quick play, because that next game is so important. You want to be playing very, very optimally. And it's really important to try to do things to preserve win streaks when you can. And it's going to go a long way if you're just trying to get that boost of rank. It's really nice when you can get that win streak boost, especially when you're losing more than you're gaining sometimes. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Now, another thing is there is an urge to stack, and I do think that stacking is actually really good and really strong, especially because you can force create synergy and constantly get better and better over time with your synergy with your partners. Like, the longer a stack stays together, the better and better they get. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest 5 stacking, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The biggest one being, when you 5 stack, if you are playing with people that are legitimately your rank, you'll often go up against other 5 stacks that are on Smurfs. And it's a sad reality, but it's going to happen a lot where you're going up against, these stacks that are just really, really good people that are not properly balanced for the matching, and it's frustrating. But 3 stacks, and especially duos, creating that synergy matters so much this season that I would highly encourage, especially duos. And just really keep in mind, if you find a partner that is not toxic and actively trying to improve y'all's synergy, y'all's pace of play, being on the same page, if you don't win that much initially, that's okay. Like, you don't have to win a lot initially, because the longer you stay together, the better these synergies will get, and eventually you will win quite a bit. But if you just are randomly, oh, you want to play, you lose one game and you disband, you're never going to build up that synergy that is any different than random people in your lobbies. And that's the whole point of stacking in the first place. I cannot iterate this part enough. Now, next up, we do got to talk about ultimates. I think a lot of people are holding ultimates for too long in particular and not evaluating what ultimates you have versus the enemy has. And this is the next stage of Overwatch that I think is really important for people to start practicing, understanding what ults the enemies have access to. And you don't have to perfectly track it. You just have to think, oh, we've gone through several fights. Everyone should reasonably have their ultimate, and only these 2 people use theirs. So these other 3 do have it. And we have these ultimates, and understanding what team has an advantage in ultimates when walking into a fight. If you're walking into a fight with 3 ults and the enemy has none, if y'all walk into that fight and utilize these ults, and you do it before people die, before people get picked, and you try to ult early, it's very, very hard to lose the fight. It's incredibly hard. But oftentimes, players will walk into the fight and they'll be like, maybe we might not need these ults. Maybe we might not need them. And then they wait around, they have a Kitsune rush or whatever, and 2 people get picked, and then they pop the rush anyways, and y'all lose, right? And it's super important to understand that it's always about team fights. It's always about winning more team fights, right? And guaranteed to win more team fights. So a Kitsune rush or any ultimate that is going to have a very high chance of winning y'all a team fight, because the enemy doesn't have ultimates, that's a great one. But in a future fight where the enemy has ults and you have ults and you pop ults to counter their ults, it makes it so you could invest and lose, which is not as sure, right? And I'm not saying don't invest ultimates in a team fight where the enemy's investing if you both have them. That's perfectly fine. What I am saying is take easy wins. Take easy fight wins, because they're so valuable to be able to walk into a fight, use an ultimate, win that fight, and allow your other teammates to snowball and get more ults. Maybe the enemy team will even swap to further hurt their economy, their ult economy, because y'all dominated them so much with that fight. And then you're going to be on your way to building another ultimate. So then, maybe you walk into the next fight and then you lose it, but you're already to 50, 60, 70% ultimate for the preceding fights. And it's super, super important that you're not just sitting there with an ultimate that could win you a fight and not using it and waiting way too long to use it. And then y'all might even lose, or you might invest after you already lost. And everyone from every rank does this, and it's super important for you to not do this, and I promise you'll win more games. Now, another thing is about objectives, and this is a really important one when there are some objectives, especially on Flashpoint, where 80% is one fight territory, and you're in a situation where you often don't want to flip, because if you flip the objective, the enemy team could get a lot of percent and make it so it's way less fights than normal. And it's really important that when you have the objective, you keep it, and you also don't fight for a very, very long time without control of the objective if you can. And in general, across especially low rank players overvalue the objectives, right? But in the higher ranks, as people are starting to learn that objectives aren't that important, I'm seeing players undervalue the objectives. They're giving up objectives. They're allowing flips to happen on points that are costing them team fights. And it's important to think about how time affects how many fights you have. And it's not like you are playing to lose a team fight, right? It's oh, we can leave the objective because we're going to win the team fight anyways. It's not going to matter. We'll come back, we'll win, we'll cap the point, right? But if you do lose and you kept the objective, you could have a secondary fight. And this is kind of a hard call to make, because I'm not saying that you should never leave objectives and never allow objectives to flip, but only do it if it gives you a much higher chance of winning the fight, right? Don't leave an objective and allow it to flip just for a little bit more damage, or trying to fight an enemy that ran around the corner and going off on your own little adventure, your own little fight. But if you need to push and press because they're low, and if you kill them now you'll for sure win the fight, then yeah, 100% leave. And it's important for you to learn how to make these calls. When does an objective matter? When does giving up an objective cost something? And when is that cost worth it? These are all the hard questions that I can't give you a perfect answer to, because it's one of the big things that you have to expand and think about on the fly, and it improves your game sense and ability as a player overall. Now, last but certainly not least, I want you to develop mastery over a small pool of characters. And this is a super important one where now more than ever, I believe that unless you're like a tracer player or something along those lines, you need multiple characters in your hero pool that you are legitimately great at. It can't just be one character. I talk about synergy all the time, but there are a lot of characters that have counters, and you can learn to play around their counters, but not if the person you're up against is like really, really good at the character that is countering you, right? Like, it's one thing you could play Widowmaker, and if they're just swapping to Sombra to deal with you, that's fine. But if you're going up against Fitzy, now you got a problem, right? Now it's like, I gotta swap. So it's important to not just have one character that you're amazing at. And I do suggest having a relatively small pool, like you're not trying to spread yourself too wide, but have a pool of characters that fit different types of play styles, poke, brawl, dive, and that don't get countered by the same thing. This is really important so that you can make it so that you're effective no matter what. You're useful no matter what, and you can try to fit the synergies on your team. You could find ways to get impact no matter what the enemy is doing to counter you, and you can always, you know, be as impactful as possible without trying to move over to a character that you really don't know how to play. I don't want you ever locking a character that you are not comfortable on unless you're learning that character actively, and you're like not just dabbling in that character just because it's the moment, but actually actively trying to get better at that character over time. Anyways, if you learned anything, please smash the like, subscribe, and if you didn't, let me know down below. Ask me any question and I will answer it right away. But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.